Top of the Sports Max Zone for this Friday. We kick things off with football. The English Premier League is back this weekend with round 36. Let's have a quick look at the games that are on tap this weekend. Brentford, Southampton, Burnley at home to Aston Villa, Wolves travelling to Chelsea, Crystal Palace at home to Watford, Brighton, they'll be hosting Manchester United, Tottenham travelling to Anfield to face Liverpool, Arsenal at home to Leeds, Leicester City facing Everton, Norwich at home to West Ham, and Manchester City with that potentially tricky fixture against Newcastle. Joining us now to preview round 36 is our European correspondent, Simon Evans. European correspondent, but I understand he's in Miami covering the F1 as action in the F1 moves to the USA. A lot of motor racing fans are envying you now, Simon, that have let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, it's really interesting here because, of course, this is at the Miami Dolphins Stadium, which I used to come here and cover the NFL, and on the car park, it looks nothing like a car park now. It's an F1 track. It's absolutely amazing what they've done. It really does feel like an F1 race. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the football business now, Simon. A lot has been made of Manchester City's mental state at the moment following their heartbreaking exit from the UEFA Champions League in midweek. Newcastle, a potentially tricky assignment for them. How are they shaping up for this fixture? Because, as we know, neither themselves nor Liverpool can afford to slip.
No, and you really do feel after the way things went in the Champions League this week that the pressure is mounted on Manchester City. They have that 1 point advantage, but they've really got to show some resilience. And if they're going to win the Premier League, they're going to have to show that. I mean, there's no question about it. They can't afford to go into some slump or to hit the bad mood button after what happened to them at Real Madrid. So big test for them. And of course, Newcastle United, one of the form teams of the Premier League since the new year, with Eddie Howe coming in as manager and the Saudi money to strengthen the squad in January. They really have been one of the top sides in the Premier League, so a really tricky one for Manchester City.
Yeah, Liverpool had to work hard to beat them last week, didn't they? And Manchester City would want to rebound to get their fans happy again, because certainly Manchester City fans are very despondent given what happened in midweek with the Real Madrid disaster, you have to call it that. But how is the team setting up for this fixture, and how might Pep Guardiola make any adjustment, if any, for his roster going into this fixture?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's going to be the issue of Kyle Walker, who I understand is going to be very doubtful for this game. He struggled his way through that Real Madrid game in terms of fitness. And you look at it, and the statistics from that game, that City conceded 6 goals over that 2 games, but they didn't concede a single goal during the 72 minutes that Kyle Walker was on the field. And that just shows you is important to Manchester City. So without him, they're having to readjust again and move things around at the back. And they haven't looked comfortable when they haven't had their first choice pairs of Walker and Cancelo at full-back. So it's a tricky one. I think what they want to do is really get that first 15, 20 minutes, get on the ball and play the kind of calm possession football that we know from Manchester City, and sort of blow the cobwebs off that way by a sort of calm spell of possession. And then obviously they look to try and exploit weaknesses in Newcastle United's defence, which was one of the weakest in the Premier League, but has been much improved under Eddie Howe.
Yes, Simon, do you think from the Newcastle football that you've seen for this season, can Newcastle inflict injury on Manchester City? A Manchester City that right now, appears a bit mentally and physically weak after how they were kicked out of the UCL.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt the way Newcastle United have played, they're capable of pulling off an upset. The big question is, of course, the motivation. They're safe. They're in that small bracket of teams that grows bigger every week, who are safe from relegation, have nothing to play for at the other end of the table. So, of course, Newcastle United will be fired up with the chance to make an impression against Manchester City. But when it really starts to get tight, when it really becomes a battle in the second half, if that's the way the game comes out, you do wonder, when Newcastle have nothing at stake, whether that might work in City's favour.
And when we think about Manchester City, of course, the only thing left for them to win is the Premier League title. How cued in, how confident are you that, Manchester City can just go on to just, buckle down now? It's a couple of games left, and just avoid dropping points to walk away with even this one title?
Well, the positive way of looking at it is that City have done this before, because this is by no means the first Champions League disappointment Manchester City had. They could be forgiven for thinking that they're cursed in that competition. But we've seen it before where they've had disappointments and then they've gone back to the Premier League, got their heads down and won the league. And it really is a psychological question, isn't it? It's going to be fascinating to see how they go on. If they concede an early goal, will they be wobbling? All the doubts start coming back? But, I think that first 20 minutes, half an hour of that game is going to be crucial for setting the mood. But, Guardiola will have been working on the mental resilience of his team and hoping that they can put this behind them completely. They have to forget about it.
Right, and then the other mouth-watering matchup will be Tottenham against Liverpool. Liverpool definitely flying high. Tottenham, still working out the maths in order to try to get into the top 4. Can Tottenham be the team to stop Liverpool?
Well, yeah, if this hadn't happened in Europe in midweek, we would be saying Liverpool definitely had the tougher game of the two. And I saw Tottenham last week in London against Leicester City, looking pretty impressive. Son in fantastic form, linking up with Harry Kane. Kulusevski is a player who's come in and given them a lot as well. Lucas Moura, they've got a lot of attacking options, Tottenham. You do wonder a little bit about how solid their midfield is up against that sort of wave of attack that Liverpool can produce and then get at Tottenham's defence. But, they are a team capable of upsetting Liverpool. It should be a really interesting game. That has potential to be a very high-scoring one, I think.
Yeah, Simon, Liverpool chasing this quadruple, a lot has been made of that. And for sure, it's an exciting prospect for Liverpool. But they do have the Champions League project still on their minds. How stressful is that for them?
I don't think it's anywhere near as stressful as what Manchester City are having to deal with, the after effects of being eliminated from it. I think, when you're winning, it's a cliche, but it's a wonderful habit to be in. And Liverpool are going for that quadruple, and it's not out of their reach at all. You fancy their chances of winning most of the games they've got in the Premier League. If City slip up, they're going to get the title. You fancy them in the Cup, and they've got a great chance against Real Madrid. So the quadruple, which just a few weeks ago no one was really taking that seriously, suddenly becomes a real possibility for them.
Yeah, you mentioned just now when you were talking about the City tie, Simon, that Newcastle is just sort of floating around and there isn't, much pressure on them. Conversely, a lot of pressure on Tottenham because they are in a battle for that top 4 race, aren't they?
They are, and it will make a big difference for them. There are a lot of question marks at Tottenham about what's going to happen this summer. Will Antonio Conte stay at the club? Will they build a project for him? Will Daniel Levy, the club owner, find the space in the club's budget to bring him in new players and build it? If you get in the Champions League, all those things become much, much easier to do. It's a better project for Conte. It's a more attractive club. And there's more resources available to go out into the transfer market. So it's absolutely vital. And to add even more spices, we didn't need it. Their main rival for that top 4 spot is Arsenal, who they play next week in the North London derby. So their biggest rivals they're desperate to get that 4th place.
Yes, Simon, and speaking about Antonio Conte, of course, in the pre-match press conference, he had a lengthy conference, and he was talking about the fact that he was asked about if Tottenham can catch up with Liverpool. Just a general question, and he was responding, saying that, the only way they can is, of course, if they spend a lot in the summer, or they hope on a miracle that they can do so. What do you make of that answer, especially because, there still are speculations as to whether he will remain at Tottenham or not. So he's basically calling out the owners, saying that you need to spend money if you want to win.
He does this everywhere he goes, Antonio Conte. That's one of the reasons why Manchester United didn't go for him when they had the chance. He's always putting the owners under pressure. He did it at Juventus, he did it at Inter Milan, did it at Chelsea. That's the way he operates. He wants to put the owners under pressure to get the best players he can so that he can win. And he has a great record of being able to do that. But, of course, they don't last very long because his relationships become frayed with the people who employ him because they don't like being put under that pressure. But it's interesting he's trying that. That suggests to me that he does want to build a project at Tottenham. And he wants to see if he can squeeze out some money for the transfer market out of Daniel Levy.
Yeah, that top 4 battle we'll be closely watching, and the Arsenal game, Simon, against Leeds fighting for their Premier League lives. I think just 2 points above the drop zone at the moment. Arsenal can't take this one lightly, can they?
No, Leeds United were a few weeks ago. We were talking about since Jesse Marsh took over, he'd pulled them to safety. Pundits were saying and so on, and then the results have gone in the opposite direction for them. Burnley have hit form. Everton have had some results, and suddenly Leeds United are in real trouble down there. So yeah, absolutely, it's going to be a real humdinger, is that one, because Arsenal desperate for the points and Leeds United as well. No one wants a draw out of that game. Both sides will want to try and get 3 points.
Yeah, Everton are in the top position of the drop zone at the moment, and they, of course, will be taking on Leicester City. A very hard season to digest for the Everton fans. Simon, how do you reckon they'll do in that Leicester game?
Yeah, they got a draw at home with Leicester recently, and Leicester outplayed them for most of that game, and Everton struck late. But that's just been happening. Things have just started to go Everton's way a little bit. They're getting a draw in that game. They beat Manchester United. They beat Chelsea. So there are signs that Everton can pull themselves out of that mess. They're not playing good football, but they've got the crowd behind them at Goodison Park. They're away on Sunday, at Leicester. Get Leicester on another of those teams, not really with a lot to play for. So you do wonder in those sort of games whether that extra edge will help Everton. And I just start to get a feeling that Everton can get themselves out of trouble.
Chelsea, I saw where Tuchel today pointed to the fact that the ownership issues and so on that confronted them after Russia invaded Ukraine. He's suggesting that that has affected Chelsea in a very negative way. Do you buy that, or is that the coach just, clutching at straws and trying to point some fingers somewhere else other than himself and his team?
No, to be fair, I think he has a point there, because this is the time of year as well that you have players with their contracts coming down, and these days it's not just that they've got only 1 year left. Players who are going into the last 2 years of the contract aren't sure about whether the club wants to sell them. No one knows whether they're going to get a new deal. Or there's anybody there to actually do a deal with them at the moment. And there's a lot of uncertainty around the sale. It looks like Todd Bowley, the LA Dodgers minority owner, his group are in absolute pole position to get the deal done. But there's still a lot of things to be sorted out with the government and the owners' test with the Premier League and so on. So this uncertainty could continue for a few more weeks yet. And that does affect players. They want to know what their futures are, and they want to know certainly who's in charge of the club.
Yeah. Before we wrap the segment, Simon, I'm not sure if you're a betting man, but where would your money go if it was put on the table that at the end of this weekend's fixtures, it will still be Man City in front of Liverpool by 1 point?
Oh, I'm really worried about City's mental state after that. I think that really hurt them, and I think Liverpool are on a fly. It wouldn't be surprised at all to me if we saw the leadership at the top of the Premier League change this weekend. That doesn't mean it'll stay like that till the end, though. There's still quite a way to go.
Yeah, that's where I was going, because a lot of people would feel that if Liverpool surges to the top of the table at this point with Man City's state of mind, they wouldn't let Man City back in.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to be fairly relentless at this stage of the season. Liverpool, we saw it when they won the league a couple of years ago. At the end, they just ground out those results, even when they weren't playing well. But I could see Mariah starting to get worried as well. I'm not sure that belief is there.
She's saying her palm is sweating, Simon. So maybe you shouldn't have said what you just did.
It does feel a tricky moment for City, a really tricky moment.
I agree. That's why it's real. It's a real concern.
Yeah. You know what? Liverpool, as you just mentioned, how they tend to be very riveting in their game towards the back end of seasons. Even last season, when they weren't very strong, they ended up so strong that they, against the odds, you'd have to say, booked a Champions League spot with a rousing finish to the season. So Liverpool are in the habit of ending seasons very strongly.
They are, and if you remember when Klopp first took over the team, there was all this talk about how Klopp teams always fade towards the end because they play such high-energy football that they can't last it for a full season. And a lot of work was done at Liverpool to make sure that didn't happen. And so we've seen it over the last couple of years that Liverpool do end the seasons very strongly. They have a good, strong squad. I would argue these days probably Liverpool have more strength in depth than Manchester City because they have players who perhaps aren't big names but can come in and do a job for them, and we've seen that already over the last few weeks. And then there's players like Divock Origi who come off the bench and start scoring goals towards the end of these campaigns. So I think Liverpool will be very, very happy with the position they're in at the moment, and looking at Manchester City and saying, right, okay, can you handle this pressure now? Can you handle it?
Yeah, can't leave you though, Simon, without asking you about the F1 in Miami this weekend, which you are covering. Leclerc, Verstappen, or will Mr. Hamilton rediscover his form?
Yeah, Leclerc's been the fastest in the practice session today. Shouldn't read too much into those opening sessions, especially on a completely new track like this one, where they're doing a lot of getting the information, getting the data, testing out the tyres and everything else. But it'll be very interesting tomorrow to see who grabs pole position. And it's an interesting season in F1, isn't it? Because with Mercedes not being as strong as they've been over the last few years, the field does feel a lot more open.
Yeah. All right, Simon, I'm not sure if when we talk to you on Monday, we'll be recapping the Miami Grand Prix, or we'll be talking about what happened in the English Premier League.
But let's do both.
Sounds good.
Have a great weekend, man. Have a great weekend.
You too, all the best.
And enjoy the Miami sun, which is completely different from how things are in England at the moment. We'll be back with more. We'll be back with more on the Sports Max Zone after this.
Stay with Sportsmax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news and entertainment.